He joins me now. Larry Elder, welcome to you.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
You've been pretty scathing about my interview with Rachel Jeantel. Why?
I was, because you weren't doing her any favors by condescendingly trying to convince her that she's a victim. This is a young lady who didn't apply herself, a 19-year-old who's still in high school. Instead of saying, young lady, take this as an opportunity to take stock of your life, you treated her like she was a victim. And that's how you're doing this whole thing about race and racism. 7,000 murders last year, Piers, of black people. Almost all of those were committed by black people. Since Trayvon Martin has his unfortunate death, there have been 480 blacks killed in Chicago alone. 75% of those crimes have been unsolved. Where are the cameras? Where are the shows? It's outrageous to act as if Black America should fear some non-black guy stalking some black kid at night. The likelihood of a black person being killed by a non-black person is extremely remote, which is why this became a big national issue in the first place, Piers.
Right. It's perfectly possible, as we have shown on this show many times, to be just as exercised by what is happening in Chicago, which is an absolute national disgrace to America, frankly, in terms of the outlandish...
But you're not, Piers.
No, but I am.
There's 7,000 murders last year.
I don't think you watched my show, Larry.
Wait a minute.
I don't think you watched my show.
Half of the murders in this country are committed by black people, even though black people are 12% of the population, which means 6% of the population is committing almost half the murders. And you throw out the old people and the young people, Piers, you're talking about 3% of the population committing almost 50% of the murders.
Fine.
This is why commonsensical people
Larry,
profile.
if you just calm down for a moment, Larry, here's the point I was going to make.
I'm quite calm. I'm just bothered by how you're handling all of this, making black people
let me speak, Larry.
It's nonsense. It's nonsense.
Larry,
you're a liberal guy. Bleeding heart liberal person, you think you're doing something for black people. You're not. You're making black people feel as if they're under siege. And it's not true. It's an outrage.
Thank you, Larry. If I could just get a word in, that would be great.
Sure.
Here's my point. I completely agree with everything you're saying about Chicago. All right, let's just get that on the table. I've been saying this repeatedly on this show. It's a disgrace what's happening in Chicago, particularly with all these young black teenagers killing other young black teenagers. And the president and people down have to deal with it. But let's get back to the Zimmerman trial. Let's get back to my interview with Rachel Jeantel, because you tweeted some ridiculous things. You tweeted at one stage, would I like Rachel Jeantel to fly my plane? Why would you say that?
I'll tell you why I said that, Piers. I'll tell you why I said that, because after you interviewed her, you condescendingly went on television the next morning and called her one smart cookie. Bull. Why don't you hire her as a nanny? Let's see how smart she is. It's a condescending kind of thing
that
a lot of white people say to black people. I think you're stupid for saying that kind of thing to try to get black people
That wasn't my question.
That race and racism
do you think Rachel Jeantel is...
when it doesn't.
Do you think she's stupid, Larry?
In America anymore, Piers. Racism is not a major problem in America anymore. The number one problem facing black people are the large number of black people born outside of wedlock. 75%. In 1960, 5% of all people in this country were born outside of wedlock. Fast forward, Piers, the number now is 43%. You look at that for crime, dropouts, all that kind of stuff is connected. The other big problem facing black America, Piers, is the economy. 1 in 2 black men does not have a job. And one of the heads of the Congressional Black Caucus once said, if a white person were in the White House, we'd be marching on the place because of the high unemployment. But we're talking about Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman as if it's the number one problem facing black America. It isn't even remotely on the top 10 list.
Okay, Larry, this isn't a sort of competition to see who can be the greatest filibuster in my show's history.
I'm not trying to filibuster. I'm just trying to make some common sense. I'm not hearing on your show.
Let me just get back to the question I asked you and see if you can actually answer the question. Do you think that Rachel Jeantel is stupid?
I think that I would rather have a George Zimmerman living in my neighborhood, and maybe if George Zimmerman were living in my neighborhood, we'd have fewer Ariel Castros. I thought we wanted people to be proactive. I thought we wanted people to say something. I know, I'm answering something different that ought to be answered.
Could you just answer my question?
George Zimmerman like he's some sort of criminal. He's not a criminal. He's
George
a guy
Zimmerman
who cares about his neighborhood.
Shot dead an unarmed
He's a guy who cares
teenager.
about his neighborhood. He's a neighborhood watch guy. Don't you want people who are proactive? And there was crime in that neighborhood, Piers. I live in South Central.
There wasn't crime from Trayvon Martin in that neighborhood.
The burglar bars are not on there because of George Zimmerman. They're on there because of the minority of thug in the community that's messing up everybody's image and reputation. This is why people profile. Instead of being angry at George Zimmerman, be angry at the minority of the thug who's committing these kinds of crimes.
Okay, if I could jump in again. So just to clarify, though, Trayvon Martin wasn't committing crime.
It was an unfortunate incident Two people had preconceived notions about each other. It never should have been happened. Doesn't make George Zimmerman a criminal. I used to work in the DA's office, Piers. I'm telling you, it was a dog case, a reasonable doubt case. Nobody I know would have filed the case.
Yeah, well, we disagree, obviously, about that. I think it's completely wrong
Obviously.
that George Zimmerman should get no punishment at all for killing an unarmed teenager.
He's got serious punishment. He can't go anywhere. Are you kidding? He's a marked man.
Well,
he's going to be sued civilly. He will never have a moment of peace. He killed somebody. Morally, he's got to deal with that, Piers. He recognizes that. He's not an
Larry,
he's not
if I may
he
respond.
recognizes what he did.
I may respond.
Sure.
You know, some people would say that he's got it easy compared to Trayvon Martin, who he killed. So much as people feel sorry for George Zimmerman not being able to lead the life perhaps he wished he could, at least he can lead a life. At least he can lead a life.
Wouldn't it be nice to have had a George Zimmerman in Cleveland and maybe already?
I don't want George Zimmerman doing my neighborhood watch patrol. No, I don't.
10 years,
I don't. I've got 3 teenage sons, Larry. I don't feel comfortable having somebody like George Zimmerman marching around as some wannabe vigilante, armed with a gun, potentially killing my kids as they come home from a store with a bag of Skittles and a can of soda. No, I don't. I don't feel comfortable.
You live in a wealthy neighborhood, gated community, plenty of security. You don't have to worry about that. Live in South Central. Come down to South Central sometime. See what's going on down there. They're not worried about George Zimmerman. They're not worried about Mark Furman. They're worried about the thug down the street coming from a single-parent household. And that situation has been created by the left-wing people like you who feel sorry for people, and therefore you want government to take care of them. If you think government is the way to happiness and prosperity, go to an Indian reservation sometime and see how they're living.
Okay, Larry, I do feel sorry for some people. That is true. I wasn't aware that was a terrible offence. But let me get back to Rachel Jeantel again, because you were very scathing. You were scathing.
Things to do, Piers.
Larry, let me speak, Larry.
You recommend the wrong things to do. If you tell people, oh, I feel sorry for you. Oh, this person's a bigot. Oh, this person shouldn't have cross-examined you the way he did. Then all you're doing is creating a victim. You're telling Rachel Jeantel that she shouldn't have to work hard. She shouldn't have to work on her diction. She shouldn't have to improve her grammar. Just have her wave the flag of victimhood, and she'll be perfectly okay. It is an outrage that the left has done to black people, and you are part of this parade.
Thank you, Larry. Just out of interest, how many languages do you speak?
I don't speak Ebonics as well as Rachel, if that's what you mean.
No, how many languages do you speak was the question.
And the relevance of that is what?
You don't think she's a smart cookie. She speaks 3 languages fluently. How many do you speak?
Oh, really? You think she's a smart cookie? So you want to bring it back to Rachel. That's not what we're talking about here.
I think you've been... I want to bring it back to Rachel because that was why I booked you, Larry.
How you treated black people like children to whom the truth cannot be told. Rachel Jeantel needs to get her act together. If my mother were alive, she would say, how dare she speak like that?
Do you know her educational background, Larry?
When I was in the 3rd grade, I know how she presented herself on the jury.
Larry, do you know her educational background or not?
People evaluate you based on the way you express yourself.
Larry, do you know her educational background? This woman, this young 19-year-old black woman that you are eviscerating for her lack of intelligence, do you have any idea about her background?
Why don't you hire her if she's so sharp as a co-host?
No, that wasn't the question, Larry.
She's one smart cookie.
Do you
Why don't you hire
know
her
her
as a
educational background? Yes or no?
I know how she came across on the jury. That's all I need to know.
That wasn't my question, Larry. Do you know anything?
Why are we even talking about this?
Because actually I think it's relevant.
Let's talk about something.
Let me enlighten you, Larry. I booked you to talk about Rachel Jeantel.
Black America. Let's talk about whether or not white racism is a major problem for black America. It is not. You are implying that it is. It is not. As we speak, there's a guy in prison right now in Phoenix, a black guy in an SUV with his fiancée, killed a Hispanic who cut in front of him. He wasn't arrested right away. Had the Hispanic family not agitated, the guy may never have been arrested. Where are the cameras?
Larry.
If you have some white guy do something or some non-white guy do something to a black person, we want to march on Washington.
Larry, let me just...
Piers. You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Larry, thank you. If I could just bring you up to speed on Rachel Jeantel, this woman that you think is so stupid. She actually suffered
I didn't say stupid, you did.
She actually suffered. We checked this with her lawyer today before I interviewed you, because this is why I booked you, of course, even though you're trying to pretend now this is the last thing you want to talk about. That is why I booked you. Rachel Jeantel, when she was young at school, had a lot of time off school and fell behind because of illness. That was why she wasn't able to go to school. She was actually doing very well. She was at B grade at high school until her great friend Trayvon Martin was shot dead by George Zimmerman. Wait a minute. I haven't finished.
She sounded to you like somebody you want to hire in any kind of capacity?
Her grades have since slipped to 2-something because of the stress that she suffered, understandably, from the death of her friend Trayvon. She's now been offered a chance by Tom Joyner and his people from his foundation to go to college. She wants to get those grades back up and make something of herself. Why would you?
I think that's wonderful, Piers.
Why would you be so scathing about Rachel Jeantel and so patronizing to a young woman who's clearly been through an appalling ordeal and who, when I interviewed her, I found to be a smart cookie, like I said. I found her to be fun and warm, engaging, street smart, and clearly from her educational background, nowhere near as stupid as you like to think she is.
Once again, I never used the word stupid. You did. She was the most important witness in a murder trial. It was she was standing between George Zimmerman and 30 years in jail, and for you to act as if she was somehow abused by Don West, whose job was to make sure his client didn't go to jail, is outrageous. And as far as education is concerned, I applaud Mr. Joyner. He's done a lot of work in the black community for education, and I would recommend, Pierce, that we do something about the 50% dropout rate in the inner city and about the fact that President Obama opposes allowing parents to use vouchers to get their kids out of bad government schools and into a better school so they can have a possibility to get to the middle class. That's what we ought to be talking about here, instead of some aberrant situation like George Zimmerman going to sit somebody that he thinks is suspicious, and they have an exchange, and there's an unfortunate death, as if somehow that's some sort of indictment of America, and black people should look over their shoulders every night and act as if some white guy is going to jump out of a bush and get them. It is outrageous. Hard work wins. Get an education. Don't pay attention to negative people, and stay focused, and you'll be okay in America. That's why most of the people in the world want to come here. That's why you want to come here, Piers.
Thank you, Larry Elder.